Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Mary Conway, and I'm sitting here at Weston Beach in Point Lobos State Natural Reserve. But to begin with, before we start to go look and explore at the tide pools, I'd like to just do the beginning line to Cannery Row of John Steinbeck. And I think many of us know this, but Cannery Row in Monterey in California is a poem, a stink, a grating noise, a quality of light, a tone, a habit, a nostalgia, a dream. And I'm going to stop there, and I do have a challenge. I belong to a poetry group here at Point Lobos, the docent group, and I think we should create a first line of poetry for our docent group on Point Lobos. But to begin, what we're going to do today, and how John Steinbeck ends this introduction, and he says, and perhaps that might be the way to write this book, to open the page and to let the stories crawl in by themselves. And so as we begin to embark on our exploration, we're just going to go down out there in the spray zone, in the high zone, the mid zone, and the low zone, and just see what crawls out. So get your pamphlet, your Weston Beach tide pool pamphlet, and we're going to head out, and we are going to look again at the various zones in the tide pools, the splash zone, the high zone, the mid zone, and the low zone. And I look forward to our exploration and just letting us see what we find today. One of the things I'd like you to notice is as I walk out to the low zone, we're still in the spray zone, beginning to be the high zone. This is really where there's a lot of photographs done by Edward Weston. And if you get down close to the rocks, there's so much beauty and shapes and lines, sediments, and actually it feels really good too. I've got knee-high boots on, so I can step in the water. But this would be your high zone tide pool. This is where I would take an elderly person. As I age, I hope my kids bring me out here and my grandkids, and I could sit here and look for sculpins, little teeny fish. I could look for hermit crabs moving around or scurrying in the water. But besides that, it's just beautiful rock formation with all sorts of sediment. And if you throw water on it, it glistens and shows its colors even more so. So here's some kelp. And here's another limpet. And I got wet on my pants, which isn't unusual. The other fun game is to figure out if the shells have hermit crabs in them or if they actually have little mollusks. And how you tell is you look here in the shell. This one is not empty. It has a hermit crab and it has a claw. So I know there's a hermit crab in a snail shell. But I'm going to try to look for a real snail, and what it has is an operculum, which is a door. But this is an actual snail, so you can see that. And it's turban because it goes round like this. And the first thing I want to talk about is those of you who are grandparents or parents and you have children that you want to bring to the tide pool. In the high zone, it's really the safest spot, and there's a less chance of slipping and falling. And here's some books that you can prepare kids with, or actually, to tell you the truth, even for me, sometimes they're the funnest. And the favorite one that I have is by Eric Carle and A House for Hermit Crab. And why I wanted to stop here and talk about it is we see, I want to press softly, and it's a bunch of pebbles. This is the high zone, so the water is gone and the sun is coming down bright. And this is a sea anemone underneath. When there's water on it, it has tentacles that come out, and the family that they're in is called cnidarians, or they are cnidarians, and they have stingers in their arms. And when they open up, they look like a flower. And what Eric Carle did is right in here, it actually looks like something that we call sea palm or pastelia, but it's his drawing of a sea anemone. And he says, in March, hermit crab met some sea anemones. They swayed gently back and forth in the water. How beautiful you are, said hermit crab. Would one of you be willing to come and live on my house? It is so plain it needs you. I'll come, whispered a small sea anemone. Gently, hermit crab picked it up with his claw and put it on his shell. And the book goes on. And hermit crab actually decorates his shell with the anemone, a sea star, and here he's getting some coral and algae, of which I see a little bit right here that we could pick up. It's actually a plant, not an animal. And my main purpose was to stop here and show you that many times children's books in the library are really helpful to bring your children or grandchildren to the seashore and prepare them for what they might see. We're now in the mid-zone, and I must say it's not every day you can lay down on your belly in a tide pool where it's dry, but because it's low tide in about 30 minutes, that's why we're able to do it. I've stopped here for a certain reason, just like to talk about what's right here in plain view in the sunshine. And first of all, we've got a plant, 2 different kinds of coral and algae, and in the tide pools, it's hard to tell if something's a plant or an animal, but this is actually a plant, and it's got calcium carbonate in it, and that's how it feels hard. And it's always good to just gently touch. And as I lay here, I can see a moving turban snail shell, so I can guess that it's a hermit crab. We've already seen one of those. You move something, you have to put it back where it was, and so I did put it back. This is a shelf. It's about 8 inches tall, 12 inches tall, and there's an opening about, if I had to guess, 2 inches, maybe 10 centimeters. And I'll tell you a trick. I read an article, found out in black abalones, you can find them in 10 centimeter wide cracks. And if you look in here, I've watched over the last 10 years, they've grown from being about 3 inches long to now they're about 4 or 5 inches long. And I can see with my eyes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's at least 10, probably a dozen, and they're actually about 12 inches back in there. But you might think then, why do they hide in there? Why 10 centimeters? What is their predator? The predator of a black abalone is typically a sea otter. And think about the skull of a sea otter. If you look at one, and some of you who may have watched the Mint Van video would have seen the skull of a sea otter, and it's about 10 centimeters. And how long are their arms? Their arms on an otter are probably about 6, 7 inches long. And so even if they could get their arm in there, they can't swat out those black abalones. They're safe. About 18 inches in front of my finger. So I think it's called a purple short crab. Okay, we've moved ourselves down in the intersection of the mid-zone to the low zone. And this is a pond-like, where in the past years I've found octopus, but they're hard to see. But what we can see is many creatures that we haven't seen yet. And we're starting to see here the purple sea urchins. And they're in the group called echinoderm, in with the sea stars, or what my age group used to call starfish. And there's these little cavities or holes, and you could see them here. They have like colonies, almost like condominiums. We're really lucky right now. We're sitting in the middle of a 3 o'clock sun. It's the lowest of the low tides. We're in a big tide pool here at Weston Beach, and we're mid to low zone. But what is really fancy and really exciting, and I've never really seen it that much, but thanks to a colleague docent, Karen Wagner, she pointed out she's been following this red sea urchin. As you can see, it's surrounded by a whole colony, a whole gathering, a whole group of purple sea urchins, with one red sea urchin sitting out in the bright sunshine. And that's pretty unusual for Weston Beach, for this habitat. Its spines are what appears to me to be about 2 inches long. And I'm going to put a ruler down in there so you can actually see how long they are. And I'd suggest that this would be a great creature for us to sketch. And what do we see? Okay, here comes and you can measure this in inches or centimeters. Okay, so we're here at Weston Beach, and we came from those stairs over there, and we walked out to the west, and we're in the mid-zone, but we're headed more towards the low zone. And I'm gonna walk through this channel, and we're gonna get pictures of me walking here. So here's kelp up on the top of the rocks. Here's some limpets, and here's a chitin. Now I'm not sure you can see this, but it has 8 plates. And it has various coralline algae on its plates. But again, do you see how I'm getting my nose into the rocks? And that's really important to find things. But here we go. We're headed to a really deep channel that has the flow of the water rushing, and it's out and around. From down low here, you can see the mussel beds are on top of this rock. I like to call it table rock. They're the California mussels, and they're all together. So we're gonna get up there and show you a really close look of those mussels. And inside them, in between them, sometimes you can find little teeny sea cucumbers or peanut worms. And they're invertebrates, no backbones. And it's just exciting to be up here. We'll also see really big owl limpets, some of the biggest on the west coast. And you'll see that they graze and have a empty space around them. So we're exploring. We're going up this way and over the feather Boa Kelp. Thank you. And you see it's got a stipe, and it's hanging out on the rock, and its holdfast is down here, and it's got a big holdfast. I'm going to put my finger on it. All of this is the holdfast to the feather boa. And you can see why the feather boa can hold on. It looks like it's 6 inches across. And I want to show you the pink on the side of the wall. The sun is coming in here, and there's pink coralline algae in the sunlight on the surface of the wall. And then there's also this laminaria that is waving in the sun. It's got the sunlight on it, so it's an orange yellow. And it's like a winged laminaria. It's got like 4, and it waves here in this surf channel. There we go. So you can see it just waving in the sun. And that is our bat star. And up here on the wall, wait a minute. The wave came up, and I wanted to stand up so I wouldn't get totally wet. I'm going to go back down and just show you the coralline algae as the wave comes in. And then above the water level here's the side of the surge channel. And that's like a new codium coming out. Here's coralline algae on the side of the wall. And there's probably tube worms in here, the tip of my finger. You can see the little holes. And then you've got all this new, here's a coralline algae, here's a limpet, and a limpet. I'm standing up for a second. This is the biggest mussel I've seen right here. Do you see it? Let me show you. And I'd like to show you the biggest mussel I've seen. It's sticking out of the rock right there. It's in the sunshine, and it's got a limpet on its outside, the white, and it's closed tight. And we're going to go up now on this shelf over here where there's a whole, I would guess, 1,000 mussels, maybe more than, maybe thousands, but on this shelf. So we're going to go look and see what we can see are on top of the mussel bed on top of the rock. Okay, we're on top of the table rock, and I told you that there would be owl limpets up here, and this is an owl limpet, and they graze the rock around its territory, and that's why there's no mussels there, and you don't see any coralline algae. So this owl limpet, if I had to guess, it's about 2 inches. I'm going to do it with sonometers, and it starts here at 1, and it's going all the way up to 6. And I don't think you can read it, but definitely 6 centimeters long and about by 4. Here's a keyhole limpet. And we're out here in probably the periphery of the low zone, and one of the really cool kelps that you get to touch, and it has one of the most memorable names, Dead Man's Fingers, and it's called Codium fragile. And it has, if you get really close here, it has something called an epiphyte, a red algae that just lives on the surface of this codium. Here's its holdfast, and a holdfast is how a marine algae holds on or really sucks on to the rock. And so even with the waves coming, it's a powerful attachment for this big, heavy kelp to hang on to this rock. So when the waves come blasting in here and try to knock it off, this holdfast right here, if you get up really close to it, is helping this plant hang on to the rocks. The marine algae do not have roots. They have holdfasts. Okay, we're gonna walk out under this shelf, and there's sea anemones down there. There's beautiful coral and algae. There's laminaria, which is a winged algae with a strip in the center. There's also, I'm pushing right here, this is an anemone where my finger is, it's soft. I'm not gonna push hard because the creature's alive, but you can see it's got all sorts of decoration and little teeny pebbles and detritus that it's trying to prevent desiccation. So again, I'm going to take you slowly up so you can see where it actually is. It's really close. We're out here in the low zone. Let's see what's under this mussel shell. Oh, what's so cool is under the mussel shell, this purple sea urchin had covered itself with a mussel shell to protect itself. What a cool thing to do. And how does it hold the mussel shell on top of it? I'm replacing it. It has little teeny tube feet that can go out there and hold that shell on top of it. And as the waves break over it, it keeps that shell on top. If I were a purple sea urchin, I would love to have that mussel shell protecting me in the low zone time, because I don't think a black oyster catcher beak could peck at it and eat it, and I don't think a seagull could get it. So that's just really cool. Okay, so I'm looking around, and you can see in this bright, beautiful sunlight, you've got more purple sea urchins in these holes, these little caves of, I'm creeping closer so you can get a really good look. There's purple sea urchins in those holes, and the purple sea urchins have spines on them, and they also have something called an Aristotle's lantern on the bottom that can scrape these caved out parts of the rock. I hope you can see that. Deep inside there's sea urchins, and it's sandstone, and again their spines, and you can look it up. Aristotle's lantern has 5 parts, and they can drill down in this mudstone or sandstone out here at Weston Beach in the Carmelo Formation of the low tide zone. Okay, so here we are, we're out in the low zone again. The waves are a little low, and I've pulled up this kelp that is just so pretty, blooming out here in the sunlight, waving in the waves. And it's called Turkish towel because it has these little teeny protrusions, I guess you could call it. And it would be like something you can imagine you would wash yourself with to get yourself clean. And it's called Turkish towel. And it's a marine algae. And it lives out here at Weston Beach. And it's just looking beautiful. Okay, we're now here on the southern edge of Weston Beach. And I like to call this cove here in front, I like to call it Seeley's Cove, because a friend of mine named Seeley, a photographer, who encouraged us docents to be artistic and to just go for it. In the beginning, I talked to you about sense of place, and we reviewed the poets, the writers, poet being Robinson Jeffers, the writer being John Steinbeck, and how to create your own art at a place. And this was a painting I did, I believe it was about 3-4 years ago, and I called it at Seeley's Cove. And I'm standing pretty much, I was just slightly up slope from here, And this is the beauty of our Point Lobos State Natural Reserve, is that you can create poetry, you can write text that you include aspects of Point Lobos in it, as John Steinbeck did with tide pools. You can actually paint pictures, take photographs, Ansel Adams, Edward Weston. But anyway, it has been a great pleasure to take you on a tour in the tide pool